Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Wednesday, June 10th of 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square's state government reporter. And in today's episode, an update on the initiative campaign that hopes to repeal the newly passed state income tax. Based on the first 3 weeks of signature gathering, Let's Go Washington, the group that is running the initiative, believes they are on track to break an all-time record. Opponents are still out there harassing, though, intimidating, and in some cases, even assaulting petition gatherers. We'll share some of that coming up. Then we're just 5 days away from the first World Cup match in the city of Seattle. And there's a lot of talk about human trafficking around major sporting events. And when things like the Super Bowl happen, when the World Cup matches happen, that there's an uptick in human trafficking. I'm going to share part of my conversation that I had today with a medical doctor who has a nonprofit in Oakland that's dedicated to helping victims of sex trafficking. And she has some interesting insights on why she very much believes that these events bring additional attention to sex trafficking, which is a good thing. She's of the opinion, but some others pushing back, saying it's really not going to make it any worse. We should still pay attention to the problem, but they suspect that some of the numbers may be inflated. And then finally, facing a $30 million deficit in 2027, right around the corner, Spokane County officials are looking at options, including a sales tax hike that state lawmakers created by passing a bill that allows a new state grant program where you can impose a sales tax without a vote of the people. My colleague Tim Clauser will wade into that in today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. So let's dive in. Let's Go Washington may break a record with this one. More than 242,000 Washington voters have signed petitions for the initiative that hopes to repeal the state's new income tax. LGW, again, the political committee behind the initiative, which is IP 26 645, announced late Tuesday that 242,699 people have signed petitions through the third week of signature gathering. Now, they hope to secure more than 400,000 voter signatures by July 2nd. That's the deadline to turn those into the Secretary of State. And that's to account for duplicate signatures, people that aren't actually registered voters or make a mistake on the petition and those get tossed out. So really they need just shy of 309,000 valid voter signatures, hoping for 400,000. Record breaking, could be well over 600,000 now is what we're looking at if the pace of signings continues. Now, this is the initiative that hopes to repeal the recently approved and signed into law income tax of 9.9% on those that make more than $1 million a year or combined household income in excess of $1 million. So the signature gathering effort is going swimmingly, according to Let's Go Washington. And here's part of my conversation with Let's Go Washington spokesman Darren Littell.
One of the things that we did was we looked at the number of people who had signed our initiatives previously. But in addition to that, we look at the people who are new signers. So somebody has never signed one of the Let's Go Washington initiatives, all the ones that we've done before. And from the group of people who are brand new to signing any Let's Go Washington initiative in the past, only 30% of those people are Republicans. So the majority of new people who are signing these initiatives are Democrats and independents. And that is a huge, huge number. I mean, 70% of them are Democrats and independents. And so it's like I said, I mean, the enthusiasm is absolutely through the roof. People are coming out and signing this and it's absolutely nonpartisan, despite what anybody else is trying to make this out to be. Folks are very, very enthusiastic about this.
Now, harassment and assaults on signature gatherers continues. You may recall there were similar attacks last year to those that were gathering for the two initiatives that are already qualified for the ballot this year. Those concern the protection of girls in sports and parental rights in schools, like the schools calling your child a different pronoun, they have to tell you. So that's what this second initiative hopes to return to. Now, in an ex post on Tuesday, we're going to show you here a man was seen stealing petitions from a signature gatherer and appearing to assault a woman just outside a Puyallup Safeway.
Don't do it. Yep. Give me these boards back. These people want to be.
Just petition outside.
These people
illegally. And we have no. So, do you want these, or do you want me to take them?
You cannot take those. What are you doing? Call the police.
How about enough?
So, as you see in this ex post, which was put up by Undivided podcaster Brandy Cruz, the woman claims this man, assaulted her. It's alleged at this point. Police did end up responding. So we'll find out if, in fact, that, charges are filed. Obviously, you could see the guy's face, and she certainly got his license plate. So there's contact there from police. And we'll follow up and find out if, in fact, something is pursued here as far as prosecution goes. But with less than 5 months until the election, there's also concern based on what Darren Littell and Let's Go Washington shared with me, that the ballot titles and the impact statements for each of the already qualified initiatives, how those appear to voters is going to be interesting. Of course, they've pushed back on this, but in the state of Washington, that's completely up to the Attorney General to create these ballot titles and the impact statements. And Littell says that in some cases, those end up being confusing to voters. Like a yes is a vote against this, a no is a vote to repeal. He doesn't want it to be so confusing. They have concerns about that. Here's part of my conversation with Darren Littell on that topic.
We're on pace to shatter records here, and that's what we're going for. And the enthusiasm on this is just something I've never seen before. I've been working in politics for over 20 years, and people are they're very fired up about this. The enthusiasm is through the roof, and we're just happy that people are able to make their voice heard. The messaging on this is critical, and it's vote yes to stop the income tax. It's vote yes to protect girls' sports. It's vote yes to make sure that parents have a right to know what's going on with their kids. So I've been telling people whenever I'm out meeting with them, it's yes on all the initiatives in the fall. There are no bad initiatives. So vote yes, vote yes, vote yes. They are all positive. They are all things that we're trying to repeal and make better through this initiative process.
Now, I reached out to the Office of Attorney General Nick Brown for comment on Littell's suggestion that the ballot titles and the impact statements may not be neutral, and I received a response via email from Deputy Communications Director Mike Falk, which said in part, Mr. Littell's comments are utterly disingenuous. Those for and against ballot initiatives have the opportunity to challenge the ballot titles. Let's Go Washington did not challenge either of those, and in one case intervened to defend the title we had written. He went on to say that there was a group opposed to the initiative, challenged the wording of it, and challenged the claiming that it was too biased in favor of the initiative. And he says that Let's Go Washington intervened to defend the title that the AG's office had written. All right, moving on. As U.S. cities, including Seattle, prepare to host the World Cup, we're just 5 days away from the first match to be held in the Stadium District in Seattle. We've heard some of the familiar warnings. You may have seen some of the posts on social media or watched local television stations that have been reporting on human trafficking and supposed spikes that happen around sporting events, major sporting events like this. Now, advocacy groups have indeed rolled out their awareness campaigns. City authorities say anti-trafficking efforts are, in fact, being ramped up. So I was kind of curious, is there really a spike as a result of these, or is it just always bad and now we're paying attention to it? And I spoke this morning with Dr. Aisha Mays. She has a medical practice in Oakland, California. She's also founder of an organization called the Dream Youth Clinic, and they provide no-cost medical services for vulnerable youth in the Bay Area, young people between the ages of 12 and 24. And she advocates quite a bit for helping young people escape the sex trafficking world. As I mentioned, she's in the Oakland area. It's really bad there, like it is in Seattle. She told me she's of the opinion that the topic of sex trafficking is still very taboo for a lot of people who simply don't want to talk about it.
People not wanting to think about it and talk about it is one of the main drivers of sex trafficking. The fact that we see it, we see things that may seem they may seem concerning, and our intuition is telling us something, but we don't want to think about it. We don't want to see it, and that is a very strong driver of trafficking. The demand is also a very strong driver. We know again that there are some people that want to be involved in illicit behaviors with children, with young people, and then also just scarcity in communities. So you also ask about why is Oakland one of the hot spots? Well, Oakland is also a space where there is high rates of poverty, high rates of violence, high rates of people not having the appropriate education to support them to getting well-paid jobs. And so when we see that, there's a lot of exploitation of people that can happen there. And so there are high rates of exploitation in Oakland because of the scarcity that we also see in Oakland, in addition to the demand, in addition to people not wanting to see and looking away when they actually see something concerning right in front of them.
So Dr. Mays suggests, as do many others in human trafficking awareness and that advocacy circle, that major sporting events like the World Cup bring more exploitation for victims. But others say, yeah, it's a welcome opportunity to bring attention to the issue, but there's no actual research, no data that backs up that big events like the Super Bowl and the World Cup actually bring a spike in sex trafficking. Um, and some of them are concerned that framing trafficking in this way as sort of episodic, right? It's only bad when there's a big sporting event or other big attention on a city, kind of is counterproductive maybe to the whole desire to bring attention to the issue. They call it the flashlight effect. Shine a light on this right now and everyone's paying attention. Doesn't necessarily mean it's worse right now, but maybe it's better to be paying attention to it regardless. There is, obviously an ongoing argument about that. And I asked Dr. Mays specifically about that.
I do love that there is more attention, that we're actually talking about this more, the more that we have these very large national and international events in the United States, because it is not just hyperbole. There is an uptick. There is an uptick of trafficking around large national and international sporting events, large national and international events. And again, we saw it in the Super Bowl. So we saw it recently during the Super Bowl that was here in the Bay Area. There was a large uptick of sex trafficking during the Super Bowl. And there actually were in Santa Clara County, the county where the Super Bowl was held, they were actually able to arrest hundreds of people who were soliciting young people. They also were able to then go after some of the exploiters as well. So we know that this is true. And again, because we know that with these large events, it is entertainment. And what comes with large entertainment is also people consider sex and sex trade and a commercial sex as part of entertainment. So we know there's a large uptick in other types of sex work and we know that, adults that are consenting to other types of sex work, if it's legal, then, that's a different thing. But we also know that they really do go hand in hand. And so what we are most concerned about is the safety of young people, the safety of minors, and also the safety of young people in their 20s, right, who also might have been exploited as minors. We want to make sure that there is no coerced or exploitative sexual behavior that's happening during these large events.
So I looked up some details on this year's Super Bowl, and the Santa Clara County, California District Attorney's Human Trafficking Task Force did report on some statistics, numbers that showed enhanced investigations resulted in the arrest of 29 traffickers and the recovery of 73 sex trafficking victims, including 10 minors. One of those victims was just 12 years old. They held those operations across 11 Bay Area counties during that big sporting event. So, again, was this a result? The increased numbers were a result of increased enforcement and police paying attention to the issue and kind of, dedicating additional resources to it. And that's what spiked the numbers? Or was it a result of the actual event happening in that city? It's going to be very interesting in the weeks following the World Cup matches here in the Seattle area to find out if, in fact, there was a spike. Did police put any additional enforcement mechanism in place? I promise we're going to be doing a follow-up and get you those numbers. Now, facing a $30 million deficit in 2027, Spokane County officials are looking at options, including a potential sales tax hike that state lawmakers created with passage of House Bill 2015 last year. Now, this created a new state grant program that allows local governments to hike sales taxes by 0.1% without voter approval, so long as it's meant to fund additional police officers and related public safety measures. So that is what the city of Spokane is looking at right now. And my colleague Tim Klauser has more.
Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. I'm your host, Christian Russell, alongside the Center Square's Tim Klauser, here today to talk about Spokane County's residents possibly facing a sales tax hike. Tim, what's going on?
Yeah, so the Spokane County, it's facing a $25 million, let me correct myself, $30 million general fund deficit ahead of 2027. In the last few weeks, the county's senior director of finance and administration, Jeff McMorris, he had placed the deficit at around $20 to $25 million. In a meeting earlier this week, he raised that figure to $30 million. And the county's faced structural gaps the last few years. They balanced $20 million deficits heading into 2025 and 2026. So this isn't much of a surprise, but the difference is in the last few years, they've kind of relied on cutting vacancies and other minor areas, what you would call the fat of a budget, to avoid detrimental service cuts. And that fat's just not there anymore. So now they're facing some difficult decisions ahead of next year. And the sheriff's office, the courts, these law and justice departments in general make up the vast majority of the county's spending. And then when you look at that further, a lot of that money is spent on salaries and benefits. So the sheriff's office mentioned earlier this week that they could be looking at a major staff reduction next year unless they come up with some more money. So a sales tax hike could be one of those options. They're exploring this tax hike that was created through a state law passed in 2025 that also opens them up to this grant program. So they haven't approved the tax hike yet. They just sent an application to the state to qualify for that grant program, and they'll get back to them and say whether or not they can implement this tax hike. They can do it before the state gets back to them, but if the state comes back and says you don't qualify, they could face some issues in terms of what they do with that money afterwards. But right now, it's looking like they could be passing a sales tax hike in the next few weeks or months ahead of 2027. In the sheriff himself, John Knowles, he told them, look, I understand how difficult this might be politically, but if I were you, I would take the risk. And he said they're pretty much weighing whether or not to raise their response times 25 to 30%, cut dozens of sheriff deputies. In the sheriff's office would just be one part of that. This tax would go towards the courts and just criminal justice spending in general. So the cuts that were explained earlier this week are just one piece of the problem. But at the same time, the budget bloat comes on the backs of local taxpayers. So they could be seeing their sales tax hike, their sales tax rate go up here in the next few weeks, the same time as several other local jurisdictions, Spokane County included, are considering whether or not to put additional property and sales tax proposals on the August and November ballots. So a bit of a tension there. The county commissioners mentioned during their meeting this week that, they are creating somewhat of a risk that voters might reject those tax increases on the ballot over the next few months if they pass the sales tax hike without voter approval to balance the budget ahead of 2027. At the same time, the money that the sales tax hike would bring, it'd be $14 to $17 million on a really good year. That's only half of the budget hole. So even if they pass the sales tax measure, they could be looking at other tax and fee hikes to close the deficit or major cuts.
So now, with public opinion in focus here, what does polling suggest? I know you cite in your article some polling data. What does the public perception on a sales tax hike look like?
Yeah, so Greater Spokane Incorporated, they're kind of Spokane's chamber of commerce, if you'd say. And they've done polling kind of quarterly over the last 2 years that looks at sentiment in terms of how people view safety downtown, overall spending, but it's kind of split. It mainly looks at the city of Spokane and the city of Spokane Valley. And then there's quite a few county voters in there as well. But the county and the cities are largely intertwined. I mean, it's one big area. It's hard to tell you're going from one to another unless you're in a really unincorporated rural area. But essentially, this polling suggests that, a lot of people are considering moving out of the Spokane region. And in doing so, they cited high taxes and government leadership as some of the main reasons for wanting to move. And there's also some notes in those polls, the surveys that say, hey, we think the city is not the county. It says the cities in the report. The cities have enough tax dollars to balance spending and to fund their priorities, and that they don't think they need to raise taxes. And again, those are in reference to the city, not the county in particular. But it kind of just shows where taxpayer sentiment is right now in the Spokane region, considering how closely aligned, or maybe not aligned, but intertwined these regions are with the different activities that they engage in, the services that they fund, and their overall coordination.
And now Josh Kearns was the only member to vote against sending this to the ballot. What's his stance on this?
Yeah, well, generally Spokane County, and you could say Spokane Valley too, compared to the city of Spokane, they're generally more tax conscious. Yeah, they have budget issues, but they have a lot of reserves set aside, at least in terms of the valley. And they're more so willing to cut spending than to raise taxes. So the idea that they have a $30 million deficit and they might have to raise taxes to balance spending isn't resting well with a lot of people, especially Commissioner Kearns, and I believe Commissioner Al French too, although he wasn't at the meeting this week. So Kearns is trying to weigh being physically responsible in passing a balanced budget, and also remaining kind of somewhat of a tax haven compared to the other surrounding regions. I mean, the city of Spokane, they've turned to tax hikes to close deficits over the last 2 years. Spokane Valley voters passed a tax hike last year to fund additional police services, and they're kind of heading into a tough budget season as well. But it kind of just shows Kern's vote was kind of just symbolic of where the county is at in general. I mean, you have the Board of County Commissioners. There's 5 people on it. 3 of them are kind of more so conservative. You have 2 Democrats on there. So there's somewhat of a shift in balance. French wasn't there. He's one of the conservative Republicans. So you had Kearns being the lone vote against, kind of representing that sector. And then you had Commissioner Mary Brooks, the chair, who's also a conservative, siding with the 2 Democrats to send this application to the state. And again, this application doesn't mean that they're raising taxes yet, but it puts it right in front of them as an option that they could exercise. Will they? We don't know yet. But there are a lot of concerns popping up in the community that their tax rate could be going up right before they also have to consider approving several other tax measures that would also raise the cost of living.
So what's the next steps in this process then for anybody watching in Spokane or just the greater Washington area interested in when this will go down possibly? What's going to happen next and how is that going to play out?
Yeah, well, now the county's waiting to get its application back from the state's Criminal Justice Training Commission, which will say whether or not it qualifies for this grant program underneath the state law that created this local option sales tax hike. But that doesn't stop them from imposing the sales tax hike in the meantime. I mean, they could come back in the next few weeks and approve it, or they could do it closer to next year. They just need to pass a balanced budget ahead of 2027. That usually happens in November or December. So we're likely to see a decision before then, but there's no stopping from the county from trying to impose this now, because there will be several months before it starts collecting revenue. So the longer they wait, the longer it could be until they get money back, which will also affect future budget negotiations. But the county, the cities, they're all getting into their annual budget processes right now. And that's likely to continue into the fall and winter, like I said. So there's just a lot up in the air right now.
All right. Well, Tim, will definitely keep an eye on this story. And for everybody watching at home, please be sure to check out Tim's story at thecentersquare.com Washington page. Thank you for watching.
So that's a wrap on today's Wednesday, June 10th episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I appreciate you watching. I hope you will join us again on Thursday. And I welcome you to check out our Center Square Washington page for more stories like this. Enjoy the rest of your day.